Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wait What Are We Talking About podcast, episode 220. My name is Brett, aka Enigma9011. You can catch this podcast live over on twitch.tv/Enigma9011. You can drop a follow over there. You can join in on the fun and conversation with us, but if you can't catch it live, that's A-OK. Go over to YouTube and podcast services the very next week, where it's broken out topic by topic and put as one big video and MP3 for amusement on the following Friday. Right, Moose? Last but not least, any way you can support the show, like, shares, reviews, whatever it is. It may seem small, but does help the channel grow. So if you take the time to do that, we would love and appreciate you for it. Today, a whole lot of wrestling talk for y'all. We had Clash of the Castle yesterday as of recording, so we're going to kick off by talking about the event there, the results, just talk about, the matches real briefly. Shorter pay-per-view in terms of how many matches there were, which seems to be, the layout, I guess, now of this Triple H era, is the, not as many matches, allow them to do their thing, give them time, and then we go from there. So kind of akin to the old NXT days, which I think works. I think it's good. I don't think anything drags on, feels really long. I think it was about a 3-hour show, so I don't know. Didn't really feel that long of a pay-per-view overall. But some highs, some lows from the show overall. Definitely one thing to just start off with, just some funny stuff. Or I guess the overall stuff. But crowd, another phenomenal crowd. Obviously doing the pay-per-views in these different markets from the States where they don't go often, and obviously get something of this magnitude of a show or size of a show. Glasgow crushed it. Definitely were voicing their opinions on some of the heels there, which was pretty funny. But yeah, they did great. They definitely add to the show, as with like the Backlash crowd and the Clash, or not Clash, the Crown Jewel crowd or Saudi Arabia crowd, kind of hit or miss. Of course, I'm blanking on the other ones that they have had recently, but it's a fun trend to see continue. Obviously, with the week-to-week in the States, it's very hit or miss. You have crowds that are sometimes really into it, not to that scale, but into the matches, making noise, and then you have almost dead crowds, whether it's just particular matches or it's just a quieter night. And I don't know if it's just not translating through like the television how loud they are, because I know when we went, SmackDown was, I'd say, decently loud, but I know I've heard it before in other podcasts that were like, oh, well, crowd seemed dead there. And I'm like, what? Did we seem to be loud? But whatever. Not sure what it is, but at least in this foray, or this, for this show, Scotland crowd definitely showed up and added a layer to the fun that we would have throughout. A few pay-per-view people there, or at least regulars that we tend to see. There was the gentleman with the flag that was there. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on what kind of flag it is. There was a long-beard gentleman and his partner. They were there, but sad news, green t-shirt pay-per-view guy was not there. Or was he? No, he wasn't there. But there was a guy cosplaying as him in the third row. Darker green t-shirt with the smiley face, same hat and everything. So I thought that was funny to see. Just somebody obviously take that upon themselves to represent. So let's get on into the matches. We did kick off with the WWE Championship, the I Quit match. Cody Rhodes versus AJ Styles. I thought the match overall was good. I really enjoyed the two going at it here, fighting through the backstage a little bit. Surprised they didn't do that a little bit more, but I guess obviously you want to be out there with the people and not in the back just where, oh, we're just watching it like we would watch it at home. AJ kind of controlled for a little bit until Cody got back into it with a thrown chair to the face and a table spot for AJ. Cody's mom was there to dish out some verbal punishment and some slaps to AJ at one point. The cuffs, Cody did get cuffed at one moment, but then he took those off and put them on AJ. I would say the only thing that was kind of negative here was the finish. I mean, logically it makes sense. It just seemed like it fell a little bit flat to me personally. So AJ gets hooked onto the ropes, kind of cowers or moves to one of the corners. Cody gets the stairs, lifts them up, threatens to smash AJ with the stairs in the corner. Obviously, he can't protect himself, so he panics and quits there. He ended up hitting him with the stairs anyway afterwards. Not in the full intention of what he was going to do, but the sideways hit. But Cody would retain here. I'm a little surprised, not in terms of like keeping it on Cody, I guess, but I thought maybe we would get something different here. I know some people had the theory going around like, oh, well, Cody's mom's there. Maybe they'll use her and make Cody quit that way. And then AJ could pick up the win. I'd be fine with that. I don't think it would lessen Cody, per se, in terms of his aura. Or, like, do anything like, oh, well, he just beat Roman after, 3 years. And then he's going to get beat after 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is. I don't think that would have been such a bad thing after that long title reign to have a shorter one here. But it goes on. I mean, he could have always gotten it back later on. I know, obviously, way down the road were, I assuming, him and The Rock. But whatever. So Cody retained here. Afterwards, he went to celebrate, and Bloodline showed up. I got excited, and then I got disappointed. So Solo shows up, stands next to Cody, and then Tama and Tonga show up and attack him. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe we're going to finally see some people we're supposed to be seeing for a while. Orton and Kevin Owens come out and save him and beat him up. And they even made a notice on commentary like, oh, the numbers are even now. Where the fuck was Jacob Batu? Nowhere to be seen. This man's been signed for months, allegedly. Still hasn't shown up. I think a lot of us thought it was going to happen here, but then Bloodline didn't even have a match. And then Hikuleo, I guess, recently became free over from New Japan, or at least his contract ended. There's been a lot of rumors he's going to head this way as well. But no, didn't see either of them there. I don't know what the holdup is specifically on Jacob Fatu specifically. Obviously, with once again his tenure, or at least his alleged signing being months ago, why we're waiting on him. Maybe it is now going to be at this 3v3, potentially between Owens, Orton, and Rhodes, and Solo, Tama, and Tonga. We'll have to see. Maybe they'll get involved there. Would that be Money in the Bank? I would presume, because that's early July, so maybe 3 weeks away. So I guess time will tell there. I don't know if they just didn't want too much of an influx of new people coming in. I mean, obviously those two are brand new to WWE in the system, but Monday, as we saw with 2 more QR codes that popped up with this pay-per-view, we do have the Wyatt Six, the Wyatt family, Uncle Howdy and crew, whatever we're calling them. They're definitely going to be showing up Monday, so I don't know if it was just he didn't want those things eating each other, that news of people showing up. It's just obviously a little different with the Six group, if all the rumored members are true, with Bo, Dexter, Nikki, Alexa, and Joe Gacy. Like, obviously they've all been in the system prior. Bliss would be the only, the biggest return in terms of time gone. Obviously Loomis being gone for a little while and Cross being gone for a little while. But different in terms of that surprise factor just because they've been in the system prior. But that's how we ended that. I know some people have taken some screenshots too of Orton kind of side-eyeing the title. That could be always a program down the line. Maybe after this scuffle 3v3. We'll have to see. But Bloodline's involved with Cody. Does that carry over to SummerSlam? Do we do something at that point? Maybe him and Solo? I don't know. Next one was our Triple Threat Tag Team match for the WWE Women's Tag Titles. I didn't have a high bar set for this one, and I feel like a lot of people are on the same page. But I will say, personally, I enjoyed this match quite a bit. I was a little checked out, so I don't know how smoothly it went overall. We're going to talk about something towards the end of the match, obviously, where it went a little bit off the rails. But I think for the most part, it seemed to go pretty well in that initial startup and for most of the match. Glad these ladies got time also to do their thing and try things out. Obviously, these teams like Bianca and Jade obviously are put in that pedestal, and I don't mean that as an insult. Obviously get a little bit more time as the champs and their aura, I guess you could say, or status. Baszler and Stark, it's back and forth. Well, they'll either have decent matches on Raw, or it's quick little losses or wins, like just quick bouts, and they don't really get much, can't really show much or get into a groove or build anything. And then Unholy Union with Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, they haven't done anything. They came up to the main roster, lost the NXT women's tag titles to merge them, to unify them, did all of nothing on SmackDown when they got brought up. They just got brought over to Raw, and this is like their first program there. As we saw in the Monday Night Raw before, they had that match with Stark and Baszler, and they just got like annihilated. And like, I guess it added to the moment later on, spoiler alert, but that was like, why are we doing this? Why would we take a team that's like literally done nothing, as I said, for a year and a half, maybe, bring them in here, insert them into this program, not give them any kind of credibility or backing at all, and just have them here. It seemed really weird. But like I said, I guess it kind of fed into the result later on. So like I said, the match went fine overall. They got time to work things out, and I think that will help if we can invest the time in this division and the tag titles here, because I know it's a little bit disinteresting, or like just there's no investment because people just don't care, and it's unfortunate. And I don't know if it's a star value or if it's just the time's not put into it, so it's like, why should I even bother investing? Those things definitely can be improved on and are one of the weaknesses, I would say, in the new regime. Not that it was super strong in the old regime. Something that can definitely be worked on, but I think this is a step in the right direction if we can continue doing that. So Fire and Dawn would eventually get the win after taking advantage of Jade and Bianca hitting that big finisher, I believe, on Baszler. And then Isla would roll in, do a German suplex to get Jade out of there, and then pick up the win through advantage. I think that was smart. Obviously, hometown folks, so that was a nice surprise overall, with them being the weakest link, as we just kind of talked about with how they've been used. But that was a really fun shocker surprise. You protect Jade and Bianca with them not taking the pin here. We'll have to see going forward if they get a run back one-on-one. If another team makes a case for them getting a rematch, we'll have to see. Do Bianca and Jade start fighting now and lead to their rivalry? Or are we going to hold off on that for now? So where did this match go off the rails? And I know a lot of people are kind of shitting on Jade, and it's unfortunate. But yeah, she didn't have a great night. And I think things just got into her head after that springboard attempt. So she gets a hot tag from Bianca, attempts to springboard in. To my knowledge, she hasn't done that before. She slips, whatever. It happens. I think she recovered fine. Her and Shayna going into the attacks with one another and just kind of rolling with it. But I think that got in her head. I know it certainly would with mine, of just like, what, messed up. And then it's just on your brain. Hard to get back into the swing of things and shake that off. But since that slip, things just didn't go well for her. There was a few things that she seemed real hesitant about or didn't execute fully on, or whatever it was. But I don't think she was the only one here, that had that issue. Shayna looked really weird to me in terms of her commitment at some times of running like outside of the ropes or bouncing off them or whatever. That looked a little strange. And then some of Alba's and Isla's stuff just didn't seem to fully connect. But, as I mentioned before, I think these are things that will go away with time if you give them the investment. Now, obviously, they have the live show circuit, so I don't know what these ladies are doing there. Maybe it is something they're trying to work on, and for some reason, just maybe the bigger stage or whatever it is, just didn't connect. Because I know all 6 of these participants can bring it. We've seen it with Shayna in the past with NXT, and it's been a weird thing since the main roster stuff. Zoe can bring it. Alba and Isla had some better matches in the past. Jade, while still new, can do well if you play to her strengths, and obviously Bianca's Bianca. I think it's just that time investment, building that chemistry with all the teams and giving them more regular time to work together, work out the kinks, whatever it is. So goods and bads here with, like I said, giving them the shot now to do it. I just think that worked against them because it is a kind of new territory for them to have this longer style match because it's not a regular thing. So I say as long as we could work on that and keep building up the division, give them time to do things, I think this is a step in the right direction and they can improve. So yeah, Dawn and Fire, new champs. Like I said, cool to see them win as a surprise. Hopefully they can make some momentum for themselves going forward as champions, and we'll have to see what comes out of that. Let's see. I don't know why .com put the attack after the women's thing. That was weird. Next one was the IC Championship. Sami Zayn going against Chad Gable. Another good match between these two. We got some more drama with Otis and Maxine. I don't know why Tozawa wasn't there. But this was kind of, and this sounds bad, but same old match between Chad and Sami. And not in a bad way. Like, both of these guys did phenomenal work with each other. There was a very questionable not 3 count on Chaos Theory. Sami kicked out a little too late. But other than that, good match here. I'm surprised Chad didn't take it. I know, at least in terms of the pay-per-view going in, wasn't sure what his contract status was. I know it ended a few weeks ago, but it seems after the show, unless that was not a reliable source, but it seems like he's re-signed. But good match between the two. We got Otis still struggling with attacking. He didn't attack Sami. Maxine got chop blocked by Chad accidentally at one point. Otis was going to flip out at Sami, and then Maxine stopped him, and then they both left, and Sami was able to hit the hula kick and get the win here. I just thought they would pull the cords and give Chad the title here. I don't know where he goes from here. If it's just a feud against Otis. There's been rumors a while. Of the Creeds joining Chad and then making a new, I don't know if they'll make a new Alpha Academy or a new group together. But I figured you could still do that with Chad having the title and then have Otis go for it. Not that Otis would win, I would think, but at least have that program there. I guess they'll just have it without the title. What's next for Sami in terms of IC title-wise? I'm not sure. We'll have to keep an eye on that. I don't know who's really been built up on Raw I guess you could go with Bronson again, but Bronson's been losing. Ivar's out of the picture due to injury. I'm trying to think who else is on Raw. Ricochet's out. I guess you could kind of tie Sami into this Ilya Braun Breaker thing maybe once they figure out what they're doing. Time will tell. Next one was the WWE Women's Championship, Bayley versus Piper Niven. Another one I'll give kudos with. Thank you for giving them time and letting them do what they can do. Because Piper, this was probably her best match in forever. I didn't really think Piper was going to win. I mean, there was a little bit more of the seeds planted with Dawn and Fire winning of like, oh, there's a chance that they would play up to obviously her also being in her home country, but unfortunately no. But I think Piper absolutely crushed it. I think this was a good match for her. Obviously working with Bayley certainly helps, not that Bayley needs to carry the load, but obviously Bayley with her pedigree can definitely help have Piper shine in those moments. And I think it was great, and I think we need to keep doing this once again. Invest in the people, give them the time, and they can perform. It's just a matter of investment. So just a great match overall. I really enjoyed it. We did get some funny moments with Chelsea Green as well as she plays up her character, try and get involved. I think she slapped Bayley at one point. She admonishes the referee for Bayley stomping on her hand. She gets tossed out. She does return later with a Rey Mysterio mask to try and get involved again, but Bayley would still retain. There was a really gnarly Piper driver, the like Michinoku driver that Piper does. She definitely kept Bayley safe, but it was like, woo, that was close. Not to inside baseball it, but I think I see how she protects Bayley in that, but it did seem really close via the camera angle. But great match between the two. Very, very good. Finisher a little weird with the crucifix like reversal thing. But is what it is. Then we got our main event. We got the World Heavyweight Championship match. Damian Priest going against Drew McIntyre. Definitely, obviously, favorite here with Drew. Makes sense. Was it written in the stars for Drew? Unfortunately, no. And that was probably another big surprise of like, wait, we're not doing this? Two had a great match. Priest at one point did try to do his like springboard outside of the springboard dive out of the ring, where he steps on that middle rope and kind of propels himself to do that front flip over. I don't know if this was on purpose or if this was accidental. I know a lot of people are kind of calling back to test. I think it was WrestleMania 17, excuse me, with a dive there. He got caught in the ropes. But Priest goes for the dive. He jumps or steps on that second rope, doesn't get enough propulsion off of it to dive over, so he kind of just falls and his leg gets wrapped up into the rope. Looks scary, if not for real. But Drew jumped on it right away, kind of checking if he was all right, and then he would attack him. The whole rest of the match, Priest was kind of hobbling around on that ankle, whether just selling it, hey, good job, or something's really up. I guess time will tell. But he did a great job the rest of the match. No issues there with that ankle causing any other problems. But these two slapped the crap out of each other, hit some big moves with some slams, claymores, etc. throughout. Did a great job. At one point, the referee did get hit out of the ring. Let's see. Trying to see when, if they even made a note of what happened with the referee. Yeah, referee got bumped like out of the ring twice. McIntyre would hit another claymore, kind of do the pin, get a long pin. Another official did come down, slides in, 1, 2, and stops. And that's when you notice the haircut and the sneakers. It's Punk. They flipped the camera to reveal his face. I thought that was a very, very cool reveal, how they set it up with the camera shot being behind the referee as he slid in. Also, Punk wearing long sleeve t-shirt to cover up his tattoos and whatnot. Counts the 2. Stares down Drew. Drew goes to choke him in the corner. Punk kicks him in the balls. This creates an opening for Priest to get up. South of Heaven chokeslam. 1, 2, 3. As the other referee would come in and he would retain his title. Big shocker here. I thought Drew was going to win. I thought we could still set up the Punk program and it would eventually go for the title. Kind of surprised by the audience's response. It didn't seem like as hateful against Punk. Like, Punk had to find the few CM Punk t-shirt front row fans to celebrate afterwards. But this didn't feel like how the initial Clash of the Castle did, and maybe it was just because of the stupid sing-along at the end, but like people were kind of pissed at that. This seemed more like accepting of it. I don't know. I feel really weird about this. Like, Punk obviously has had a kind of tumultuous history since coming back to wrestling with the whole, brawl out stuff and follow-up. Like, I've been kind of on the fence with him. Like, I'm excited he's back in. I don't know if I'm at the same fandom I was back in the day with his initial run. But this seems weird, and it seems to, like, paint him to be the heel. And I don't know if it's just really situational of being the Scotland territory. And obviously we pulling for Drew there, as Drew typically plays heel. And had to, obviously be face here. Would have been real weird to have his home country boo him. But I don't know. This seemed really weird. I'm going to be curious coming into Monday and the coming weeks, like how people react. I know people obviously have a very big fandom of Punk, as we hear from the chants week to week. I don't know. I don't know how this goes. Like I said, it could just be situational with the territory of where they were that night. But this, I'm like, oh, well, Punk's kind of the asshole here. And I mean, they're beefing, so why not? I just don't know if a good guy would have necessarily done that. Obviously, there's plenty of wrestling history done throughout, so maybe this is something that's happened before, and I'm just being oblivious, and my memory's not there. But this seemed weird. This seemed to paint him as the heel more. So it'll be interesting going forward to see how the fans kind of gravitate, of which direction they'll go and what the backing will be. But I feel bad for Drew. Just doing this again. Obviously, the first Clash not in his home country, even though they tried to tell us that. But having that support and losing both big events here, just like, ooh, sorry, buddy. Not that I think Damian Priest is doing a bad job as world champion, or he necessarily like, just get it off him, he's doing bad. I just thought this was going to be Drew's moment, and we would set it up between him and Punk for the title. But cool to see we don't need the title for that feud as well. Now I guess we get Priest and Gunther at SummerSlam, which, cool. We haven't seen that. I thought also maybe that would have been the plan with Drew winning it, give Punk more time to recover, have him and Gunther run it back and slap the crap out of each other. Who knows? But yeah. So overall, pay-per-view was good. Had a good time with it. Once again, the crowd really just added that whole another layer to it with how responsive they were to everything. I think overall the thing that I want to take away from this is, once again, is your time investment. Obviously, there's limited TV time. Obviously, there's a lot of people on your wrestling rosters. That's kind of the problem with all wrestling companies, is just the inflation of talent, or how much talent they do have. It's hard to throw in and balance everybody to make sure they're getting their time, upgrading, getting, more stock and investment into their characters. You kind of have to roll with what's working and who's already getting a response from the audience. But I think this was a nice experiment of like, oh yeah, if we do put that time and effort into maybe these lower tier superstars in terms of popularity, give them at least the chance to prove, yes, I belong here, I can do something if we have that time. Obviously, it's not force it. If something's not working, don't do that. But see what is working, build upon it, build upon those stories, whether there's a title involved or not, and those characters, and just, what's the phrase with the ships? All tides rise, all ships, whatever it is. I'm butchering that. But do situations like this where you have more established akin person like a Bailey, like a Bianca, and put a talent who doesn't have as much TV time, like a Piper, like an Unholy Union, whatever it is, and try and elevate everybody. Because if everybody's doing well, it's just better. It's better for everybody. So we'll have to keep an eye on it, see if this trend continues. Jeez, I'm sorry, everybody. Post-show, heading into Money in the Bank in a few weeks, and then SummerSlam. I think that's a little bit longer of a break, but we'll have to see going forward how that plays out. Moving over to topic 2. This one might be a shorter one, but just kind of a question I was contemplating myself with a little bit of a rewatch. We're sticking with wrestling, but we're going to be talking about NXT and the kind of black and gold era. I've been rewatching, kind of just to relax at night, the NXT pay-per-views or takeovers recently, from like Neville era of champion until I think the last one, or the most recent one I watched was what takeover it was. It was one of the ones around Mania, but the main event was Gargano and Ciampa in that unsanctioned match. But in rewatching these, I'm kind of curious, like, what if the NXT Black and Gold style would work, or why it hasn't worked, or they haven't committed to it, I guess, recently in the Triple H era. Obviously, NXT evolved the Black and Gold. Triple H was kind of in charge of that. And we saw him build up this brand of like an alternative prior to AEW, obviously taking what Ring of Honor was doing and PWG and that kind of style, of the indie style, and bringing it to a more produced, high production value with the WWE stuff. Bring it to the mainstream, I guess you could say. And obviously it caught fire. People really loved it, connected with a lot of the independent talent that was coming in, like your Ballers, your Owens, your Zanes, the list goes on and on and on, along with a mix of hometown or homegrown talent. We had the discussion a while back about, like, obviously the call-up success with Vince being in charge, and like some people really catching on and a lot of them kind of floundering, not doing much. But now with Vince gone, Triple H being in charge, obviously Shawn Michaels running the 2.0 post era. I don't even know if we could still call it 2.0, maybe 3.0. I don't know. I'm curious to like why that style of match hasn't made its resurgence into Triple H's era, and would it even work? Just watching it back, obviously, with the NXT style back in the day with the black and gold, a lot of things were more faster paced. You got a lot more false finishes, and I'm curious if the audience in WWE is even still there for that match, and that's why they haven't committed to that. Obviously, with AEW being now, established, being 5 years old now, something like that. They also took that approach of the insane pacing of matches and the move sets they're going to do. And that audience, I don't know if just shifted from NXT to AEW. I know NXT at that time. Really congested today, I guess. I know NXT during that period of pandemic kind of didn't really hit the highs that we were hoping for, or kept that momentum. Obviously, there was a lot of things going on backstage in terms of who was in charge, Triple H having his health issues, and that transition into the NXT 2.0 era after the Wednesday Wars didn't really work out in WWE's favor. I'm curious if it's just WWE hasn't gone back to that style because that transition of audience went over to AEW, and then you now have this more general audience, and I don't mean that in a bad way of just we're here to see it, but we've seen it sometimes from week to week where we'll have wrestlers kind of pull out this style of match and you don't get that same response from the crowd. I'm wondering if they haven't fully invested in that because they don't get that feedback, or that, feedback from the crowd that they are kind of hoping for because they're not there. And they just decided, let's go back to our style. Let's go with what's working, in a Rhodes and Uso, where we get these big reactions with a different style. Not that it's a bad style. Those matches are still engaging. Just in comparison, it's not what Black and Gold had to offer. And I'm curious if it's just rose-tinted glasses also for my part of being these matches were great, and it doesn't seem like they do that now, or it's definitely different. For example, there's a lot of talent under Triple H I'm surprised hasn't flourished more. They've definitely tried, but for some reason they don't play to their strengths, or what I believe are their strengths in those types of matches with trying to get over with the audience a little bit more. DIY are the biggest standouts to me of watching some of their matches back of why don't we do more of that and see if that clicks with the audience, because I feel if they have a compelling back and forth, not necessarily them together, I'm sure that'll happen eventually, but obviously Ricochet's a little bit tougher of an example to use because he's kind of on the way out, but someone like a Ricochet, run back Ricochet and Gargano, do something like that, or Andrade Gargano, or I'm trying to think of who Ciampa had a really good rivalry with, him and Dunn. You could do something with them. Obviously Cole not being there, that's somebody I would always throw into that, but he's doing okay over in AEW, I'd say, obviously injuries aside. But why not take these players who did that kind of style of match back in the day, and if you want to get them over, try and have them reestablish whatever the chemistry they had, kind of once again play to each other's strengths, and it could be everybody walks away from this as a winner or getting more momentum behind that. I'm just curious why they don't do that. Obviously Shinsuke's another example where they don't really use him, and granted, the NXT Black and Gold I'm talking about, this was 10, a little less, 10 less years ago, so maybe it's just we're all getting older, that's totally fine and fair, or if it's just the travel schedule now. I'm not saying you got to pull out those style of matches all the time, but maybe have a blend of, hey, we're going to have a program at the pay-per-view. We talked about with the last topic, if then we're going to stick with this 5-6 match structure, gives them more time. Why not pull out these types of matches at those pay-per-views in terms of a wrestling crowd in these hotter arenas where it's a foreign market, or it's people are obviously a little bit more invested because it's a pay-per-view or whatever it is. try and use that to your advantage to propel these talents forward in terms of the week-to-week viewership of like, oh, I should really watch a Bronson Reed, a Gargano, Dakota Kai, whoever it is. Because, I've seen them pull out all the stops here and there. I'm curious why they don't use it like that. And then if it's somebody like, we're not using you in a pay-per-view program, or your payout, whatever it is, isn't going to be there, you could still sprinkle those matches in, I feel, on regular TV television. Obviously, time is a little bit more limited there with commercial breaks, and you don't have that what am I trying to say? Fluctuation of like, we can easily throw you 20, 30 here, because with your TV, there's a lot of stories. Obviously, you're trying to establish, build upon characters, whatever it is. So it's a little bit more difficult, but you give 15, 10 minute, throw them out there. And I'm not sure if that's what they're trying to do with the speed programming as well on X. I haven't personally watched. The only speed match I have watched was that recent 30-second one with Andrade and Carl Anderson. Like that's way off. Don't do that. I'm curious why this style hasn't latched on in terms of mainstream audience. Obviously, once again, AEW seems to be catching it. Is it just because all of that audience went with them, or a majority? Because there's also been, I guess you could say, strikeouts with this in terms of like cruiserweight stuff. Cruiserweight typically was faster paced, as we tried with 205 Live, and like I really enjoyed the Cruiserweight Classic when we did that. Granted, it was once again kind of peppered with this NXT Black and Gold, and it was years ago, and it also had the distinct flair of like independent talent being involved who wasn't signed with WWE. So there's a lot of factors in that are kind of is existential the right word? I don't know, but outside factors there that could have added to the increased excitement for it. But 205 Live, they tried that again, and that didn't really seem to take off, whether it was the Cruiserweight division on Raw during that time, or the separate programming itself. Like, I didn't watch 205 when it was a separate show. I heard they had some great matches there, but it was at that point of like, there's so much to watch. Like, I can't watch everything, or rather didn't feel enticed to watch everything. So I don't know if it's just feeling the failed experiments there, that they don't want to go with that route. And maybe it's also just time will tell. Like, I feel like there's a lot of talent that could benefit from this. Once again, I'm going to just shout out DIY. But looking through some of the matches here is like the big ones, like Authors of Pain, I think could benefit from that. Not that they were the fastest team ever, but I think that could help establish them. Andrade, I think, could benefit from that greatly. Dunn, Ricochet, if he doesn't leave, which, he probably is. Not that the War Raiders have done a bad job, or the Street Profits have done a bad job, but it'd be cool to see them back into the swing of things with that type of style. Dijak, when he shows up, we saw it even with this newer NXT era, like even some style matches there. I feel like some people who have kind of come up to the main roster, it's a little bit of a styles clash of like they're not doing what they did. I think it's definitely been a better transition from NXT to main roster in terms of call-up, because there is more of that synergy and connection, as we've seen, even though still early, with those initial establishments of like a Lyra Valkyria or Ilya Dragunov or Braun Breaker. Like, I think the momentum's behind them, and they're doing a good job with these talents of like establishing them. But there's others that have missed, like a Dragon Lee. He had a great showing at the beginning of SmackDown when he first showed up, and he's kind of been floundering since, unfortunately. I had another one in my head. Pretty Deadly. What the fuck are we doing with Pretty Deadly? Like, they don't need to be crushing people. They can be comic relief, but they can get some wins, do some stuff there. Sorry, I had somebody else in my head, and of course I'm blanking hard. I don't know. It's been this mixed bag, I feel. JD McDonough. Like, obviously he's being the comic relief, I guess. Well, not comic relief. He's being the fall guy for Judgment Day. But if you go back, this is one of my favorite matches in the past couple of years. But Stand and Deliver, I believe, 2023. And now I'm going to look it up just to make sure. But it's a North American title match. It's a 5-way. It's Wesley defending against Dragunov, JD McDonough, Dragon Lee. And one other individual. I'm so sorry. The preliminary matches. Axiom. How could I forget Axiom? I'm so sorry. Axiom, Lee, Dragunov, McDonough, and Wesley. Yeah, Fatal 5-Way for the North American Championship. Like, those guys fucking nailed it. They're insane out there, just crushing it. A lot of moving pieces, obviously. Like, those are people who I feel sometimes aren't hitting to their fullest potential. And like I said, there's better synergy where there are people who definitely stand out and are doing decent or okay so far. It's just this, in terms of that style of match of the black and gold, or what I feel like they've kind of built back into with this more recent NXT in some cases. There's people who could benefit from it. I'm curious why they don't do more of that on main roster. If it's just the schedule and like the frequency of being on the road in comparison to what they were on the NXT programming, that certainly could be it. I get that. You don't want people burnt out, stamina, obviously, and then injuries galore. You don't want that. But every once in a while, I feel you could throw matches like this and kind of try and help establish not just the old NXT talent, but like any talent. Give them a ripper. Let them loose. Have something that's really awesome and give the time to them, as we once again talked about with Clash of the Castle. Kind of try and build them up in terms of the mainstream, not just those hardcore pay-per-view audiences. Try and make them more exciting, more enticing from the week to week, because once again, if everybody's doing well, it's just going to elevate the company overall, and you don't just have to rely on your top 10 people here and there. And I think overall, WWE in this new era, as we can see with audience, like ticket sales and everything, like they are doing a good job. There are a lot more people that are interesting and have this backing behind them. I'm just trying to think of like, how do we get the lower threshold of at least like perspective, that talent, how do we elevate them to get them also to that level of the main event people, so you can then pick and choose, flip flop, go all the way around. It's not this big jump of like, oh, well, I don't really care, and I'm just going to use this as a recent example. I don't care, it's Piper Niven, she's definitely going to lose, like she's just being inserted here. There could be that chance of like, oh cool, Piper's here, and then you kind of create that sense of doubt, which you obviously want for your programming, that suspension of disbelief. But it's not that big of jump of just like, oh, we're just picking a name out of a hat to get Bailey a program here, or whoever it is. Once again, this is just a recent example, nothing against Piper specifically. Just how can you establish these people to make it better? How do you build upon it and not make it feel weird? I guess. And I think these types of matches could help these people that are not floundering, but maybe aren't connecting as well with the audience. Maybe giving them these types of matches more consistently on either a bigger stage or in front of an audience. Like I said, the TVs week to week is really tough because sometimes you get a hot crowd, sometimes you don't. I don't know if it'll just be a situation where it's a slow burn, like a Jey Uso. He did great, obviously, Uso stuff together as the tag team. They had their own momentum, but I wouldn't say Jey, in terms of a singles wrestler, was always the most exciting. It's been something that he's built upon. Once again, in rings, fine, but like obviously the crowd's behind him because we've built in this character. He's relatable. People like doing the dance and saying yeet and all that. You can build this up with others wrestlers throughout, where even if they're not the most engaged in the ring every time, they'll have that outpouring of support with the people because of it. So maybe this can be another tool that they can use of like, oh yeah, these people can actually go in the ring. Maybe we can do something there. And like I said, it could just be a timing thing of like, yeah, Brett, that was 10 years ago. Of course they're going to slow down. Who knows? Just an interesting observation or thing to think about with watching these matches of old, of like, why not bring that back and have that used more often in today's day and age, of WWE? Or is it just that's not the styling and that style's over in AEW more often. Who knows? Just some food for thought. But everybody, this has been another episode of the Wait, What Are We Talking About podcast. My name is Brett, aka Enigma9011, and you can catch this podcast live over on twitch.tv/Enigma9011. You can drop a follow over there. You join in the fun and conversation with us, but if you can't catch it live, that's A-OK. Go over to YouTube and podcast services the very next week, where it's broken out topic by topic and put as one big video and MP3 for your amusement on the following Friday. Last but not least, any way you can support the show, like, shares, reviews, whatever it is. It may seem small, but it does help the channel grow. So if you take the time to do that, we would love and appreciate you for it. Thank you guys so much for listening to all this fun wrestling talk. If you guys got any thoughts on Clash or the NXT Black and Gold matches, please let me know in the comment section down below. We'll continue this fun conversation because wrestling's always fun to talk about. But yeah, appreciate you guys hanging out today. Give this a watch, give it a listen, and we'll see you guys on the next one.